this meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. FOIA notification's been posted. Okay, approval of the minutes of July 8th.
Oh, wow, we're having.
Do I have a,
This is great.
Any comments? Corrections, additions? If not, we have a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I'll approve, second?
I'll second.
Second? Okay. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay.
I wasn't here.
That's right, you were here. Okay, I think passes. Agenda. Any comments regarding the agenda? No. Okay. At this time, I'll entertain any citizen comments not pertaining to the issues on the agenda. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make comments not related to the items in the agenda?
What did he say?
Okay. All right. Let's get then,
Just have to gamble.
do you have an item that you want to talk about that's not on the agenda?
I'm not sure if it necessarily, yes. Is on the, yes.
Okay. Text amendment to the Community Development Code, Section 3.1 to 6.0, Consolidated Use Table, in Section 41190, Recreational Facilities Campground. That's the first item up. Rob?
All right, so if you remember, this was an item on our July 8th agenda that we took up, and these are a list of amendments to our campground standards. And at that time, we had prepared a list of amendments, and the question was raised by one of the members of the public about the option of, could there be a smaller rural campground that allows RVs but is limited either through density or something so that, that would, allow it to be compatible with the surrounding rural areas. And that very question, the Planning Commission directed staff to kind of look into that whole issue. Primarily, it had to do with the availability of sewer and water, because the way our campground standards are currently written, the only campground that could be off of sewer and water on lot septic system is the primitive campground, which restricts, the length of RVs. And so the question was raised, could there be an option for an RV park on...
Excuse me, Rob. Can we have that door closed, please? We're hearing commentary and from the hallway, and it's kind of interrupting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And so that very question, I think, really caused us to take a second look at these, at the campground standards. And this is something that actually had been bothering me since we enacted them, is that there's very little difference between the primitive and the semi-developed, and the only difference has to do with the length of the RVs. And if you look at the impact of a particular campground on a surrounding rural area or a developed area, the length of the camper units is only one aspect. The much greater aspects would have to do with things like buffers or limitations in size. And so we took another look at this, and basically we also spoke with SC Department of Health and Environmental Control, DHEC, about what they are seeing typically in rural areas for campgrounds. And they said that typically an a small on-site wastewater system, which is the typical kind of way of disposing of sewage on a rural campground that has no access to public water and sewer, those have a capacity of about 1,500 gallons per day. And in reality, that translates to about a maximum of 15 campsites. They said basically between 12 and 16. And so in our rural areas, if we're allowing campgrounds, really, we should probably be, recognize that natural barrier to how large these campground developments could be. And so we rewrote the primitive campground standards to be limited to those 15 sites. We increased the buffer back to 100 feet wide because it did not make sense for in a rural area where you have a campground, you want to have that buffer and make sure that you're not having adverse impact on neighboring properties. We added a minimum site area for campgrounds, 3 acres. That in itself is most likely dictated by that buffer requirement. But this would also, limitate a proliferation of these campgrounds. It would be something where we would make sure that there was enough land to support this type of use. So in a sense, the primitive campground, and then the other thing we did, because we realized that the greatest impact is the number of units, it didn't make sense to be regulating the size of individual campers, which is something that is very hard. It's going to be difficult for us to enforce, and use the maximum of 15 sites as be the, to define what a primitive campground is. That, the increased buffer in a minimum site area go a long way to make that compatible with the rural areas of our county. When we move up to semi-developed campgrounds, those are allowed in rural, but they have to have access to water and sewer, and those areas are limited in our rural areas. In St. Helena Island, that would include Sea Island Parkway between Palawana and the elementary school. There are places in our county that are zone rural that have public sewer and water, but they're limited. But those types of campgrounds are also permitted in other districts, where sewer and water is more readily available. So, if you want to have a larger campground in a rural area, you have to have that access to public water and sewer. And then, of course, the developed campground, that is something that is more compatible with our regional commercial areas, where you have the capacity, the road network to shoulder that size of campground and the impact it would have. So that's kind of how we've rearranged those 3. For the most part, the semi-developed and developed have remained the same. What we've done is really rethink the primitive and make it something that is compatible with what can be supported by an on-lot septic system. Now, there are septic systems that could shoulder greater capacity in 1,500 gallons. Our soils make that very difficult in Beaufort County, and then also you're looking at something at a larger scale that if there's a proliferation of those in the future, we could have environmental issues with having these larger package on-site systems. Other than that, the changes are similar to what we presented at the last meeting. In the use table, we made sure that the use table in Article 4 were consistent with each other. That was a problem that we had with the original draft of this 3 years ago. That problem is corrected in the use table. The other thing is it's made a conditional use, because by conditional use, you're saying that they must meet the conditions that are outlined in this section. We had it as permitted, but it's really a conditional use.
Okay.
And I certainly will answer any questions you have, but.
Questions?
Well, I just want to thank y'all. Appreciate you taking the time to do that, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I ditto that. She may have to move this down because I didn't bring my copy with me. When they talk about buffers, continuous buffer, what if there's a pond in the way?
Well, we're defining it as a vegetative buffer, so,
We gotta work around the pond? I'm just,
yeah, I don't know, that might be a question for Hillary.
Then we'll try to beef up whatever buffer it is to make it look like it's 100 feet if there's an existing pond.
okay,
So
so that was
we
what
have
we're
to
agreeing.
fill some of that pond to create the buffer.
There's also, and this is the second question, or comment, there's also a statement in there about maximum extent practical. Who defines practical?
And which item does that?
It was, you'll see maximum extent practical. Go, keep
On
going
the
up.
tree requirement?
Yeah, that's a favorite among planners.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, basically,
Hello.
as
Oh, yeah, number 7, right here.
when a campground would come in to be reviewed by our staff review team, we would be working with them. We have a certified arborist on staff to look at their tree survey, do site visits to make sure that they're taking the greatest steps possible to preserve existing trees in the site. We do have tree planting requirements, so that if you have an open field, each site still has to have, they have to plant trees for each of the sites.
So, I'm just saying you might consider putting who determines the practical. If the applicant says, well, this is practical, and you say it's not practical, then you've got an issue.
Well, I mean, I believe that we do have tree standards in our ordinance, and we would refer to that, and that outlines the process. How we determine, that's a challenge that we face with every development, is that balance between how far can we push to save trees on site and
Drainage ditches,
the
there's all
development
kinds
rights
of
of
things,
the
trails, yeah. There was another, let me see, 3,000 square foot minimum,
Oh,
or was that a maximum or minimum? Let's go back to that.
I hope it says maximum.
Maximum, yeah, 3,000 square foot. I didn't write this last one.
Yeah,
Maximum.
not to exceed 3,000
Yeah,
square feet.
do are buffers included in that?
No, that refers to accessory uses. So, typically
Right.
in a larger campground, you're going to have a camp store or a,
Oh, so they're not talking about a baseball field or a soccer field or,
yeah, we'll look at that. I want to make sure it's basically limiting the footprint
Of
or
buildings.
square footage of the building.
okay, that makes it clear if that's.
Yeah,
that's
if somebody
that.
has an open field, for football or something, or
Okay,
that's not something that would be counting toward that 3,000 square feet.
that's all I have. Great.
Other comments?
Just a point of clarification. So Rob, under primitive, it means that an RV of indeterminate length with 100-foot buffers on either side could be next to a tent. That's now the difference.
Well,
Although-
actually,
oh.
that is something that, because we require screening between the RV area
Right.
and the tent camping. Just, that, and the other thing is that we allow primitive campgrounds in our T1 Natural Preserve District, but that does not permit RVs.
Right.
So I forgot to make that distinction. But those areas primarily consist of rural and critical lands, marsh islands that are not accessible by bridge. So they're limited areas where somebody may want to build, a campground that is truly primitive or ecotourism or something to that nature.
It seems to me you're giving a developer of campground some latitude there. I mean, it would be in his or her best interest to decide on the kind of market they are serving, and
Yeah.
if it's RVs and tents, maybe the RV goes to one side and the tents go to the other. I mean, you're not dictating that, but
Yeah, and
under the
also, I think
usage.
we also determined that the impact, 15 RVs or 15 tents with the buffers, the external impacts are not that great to be regulating the size.
That's what I really liked. I want to follow up on Jason. Thanks for kind of pegging it to that rationale. Thank you.
Any other questions? Did you want clarification on that 3,000 square feet, what it contained?
Yeah, he.
Did you get, what,
yeah,
okay, there's
no,
no,
he's going to look at it, right?
Yeah, And,
So you want him to get back to us before we vote on this?
No,
yeah.
I trust him.
So you want to go
We'll look at
forward?
that among our staff, but
Okay.
if we need to add a few more words, just to simply say that the buildings shall not exceed 3,000 square
Okay,
feet.
Yeah, I trust
okay.
Because I agree, I wouldn't want to, somebody wants to build a large playground, wouldn't want to limit that activity. That's not, that's an accessory use, but it's not the type of thing we're trying to limit the size of. We're trying to make sure that these semi-developed aren't becoming kind of
Convenience
RV
store.
resorts, which
Yeah.
is, there's a big distinction between the,
Right.
where they have a few
Exactly what we're
restaurants,
talking
and,
about.
it becomes, it's a pretty
Yeah, thank you.
big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Any public comments regarding the campground standards that are being proposed tonight? Do we have anybody online who's viewing this? Have any comments? No? Okay. If there are no further comments, then I would ask for a vote for approving the text amendment to the Community Development Code, Section 3.1.60 Consolidated Use Table, and Section 4.1.190 Recreational Facilities Campgrounds.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Have a second? All those in favor, raise your hand. Have a unanimous approval, no dissenting? Okay. Let's move on to the next item. The 2040 Comprehensive Plan, the review of collected public comments. You want to explain how we're going to proceed with this, Rob, with this?
Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll just give you some background. I think most of you are familiar with what we've been working on over the last year and a half, and especially over the last several months. Basically, we began in earnest the process of developing a revision or revised comprehensive plan at the beginning of the year 2020. We hired the consultant design workshop, set a schedule, of public hearings and meetings and workshops. And I, really began the process with the kickoff in March 2020, and then all of a sudden, everything shut down around us. And so at that point, it became a challenge. How do you continue with the comprehensive plan, which relies very heavily on public input and working with the public, engaging the public's concerns and, for the county. We proceeded that summer and into the fall with a few public workshops that were virtual, online. We had a lot of, people who participated who recognized that the demographics, when we started to look at how people filled out the surveys, we were not necessarily getting a good representation of the county's population. So we also, in October of 2020, held 3 in-person socially distanced workshops, one at Burton Wells Park at the Senior Center, one at Buckwalter Recreation Center, and then one at Frizzell Hall at Penn Center on St. Helena Island. Those were held, I believe, the 27th, 28th, 29th of October. From all that input and from working with the consultant, we developed a draft, which was unveiled in April of 2021. If you remember, we had design workshop, give a presentation. It became available online, and we gave each of our commissioners a copy of the plan, notified the public, so that really began the process of gathering public input on the draft plan. It became apparent to us that we just were not happy with the amount of public input. Certainly, people spoke to this board, making that very concerned that, this was, we did not get, enough input from the community and certainly from, certain parts of the community. And so we felt it was important to, rather than simply open up a period of public comment and receive comments, make the revisions and then ask the Planning Commission to take action on the document, we held several more public workshops in the community that were very well attended. We had one at Burton Wells Park. We had followed up 2 days later at the library on St. Helena Island. And then also Councilman Glover and Councilman Somerville held a public hearing or public meeting on June 24th, which the main focus was the comprehensive plan. Through all that, and just kind of giving you the background of how we got to this point, we got over 250 comments. It's really hard to gauge because we had very long letters that brought up many different issues, and I received emails that had one specific concern that somebody had. But what we did, and I put all the credit to Libby Anderson and Juliana Smith, is that we took each one, documented, and then came up with a decision of how we want to move forward. We really wanted to defer to each of the comments and make sure that they are addressed properly in the plan. Some of these comments led to major changes where we added a recommendation or made some significant changes. Some of the comments led to, I would say, minor revisions, wordsmithing, a few word changes here and there to provide some clarification. Some of them were more, typos. We still had a few of those. And then general comments. Sometimes people would say, I'm very concerned about traffic, and so it wasn't necessarily one leading to a specific change in the document, but we certainly wanted to document that comment. And so that's kind of how they are arranged in the spreadsheet that you all have received in your packet, and it is also part of the public agenda. With these comments, we have, I would say, some major themes arose. I mean, obviously, there are many different comments that were made that can't be categorized, but some of the prevailing themes that we received, one had to do with affordable housing. This is something that the county has been really grappling with, I would say, for the last 25 years as we've grown exponentially, have grown from a kind of a rural county to an urbanized county. And housing affordability has been a concern all along, and there have been many actions taken, but it's something that requires a lot of very comprehensive strategy and a lot of different actions. So it's something that we're always attentive to make sure we're addressing in the plan. So we've made some revisions to the plan addressing affordable housing, the comments that were made. One specific issue that came up during this period was the protection of historic cemeteries. We have many historic cemeteries in our rural areas. Many of them are African American cemeteries. A lot of these are either on private, on lands that are owned by someone else, but they're required, state law requires access to those cemeteries. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect the cemeteries, to make sure that they, if there are opportunities for them to be transferred to a group that is responsible for taking care of the cemeteries, we want to make sure that all these steps are taken. We think that there's room for improvement in our community development code to protect or provide buffers, where you have a cemetery on a private lot, and making sure that we're emphasizing public access. Heirs property became a big issue, and that's always been one in Beaufort County. We have, properties that have been owned by generations of families, but the title is not clear, and it becomes an issue, through work concerns about taxes, concerns about one family member cashing out and selling the property. And so we want to do everything we can to promote the protection of heirs property and keep family properties with families. Sand mining, this has always been a concern, especially in our rural areas, because we all need fill, or developers, home builders need fill to, for development, and they go for where land is least expensive. A lot of times that is in our rural areas. In places like St. Helena Island, this is changing the landscape. I mean, there's a lot of ancillary impacts of sand mines, everything from the actual trucks who are moving dirt to the creation of all these new ponds that didn't exist to the loss of dry ground. I mean, it's a real alteration of the landscape, and that's something that we want to make sure that we address moving forward. We obviously have standards now, but as anything, they always need to be reevaluated to make sure that we're preserving, the community and surrounding areas, the environment. Water service, this is an issue, and we do have a more extensive public water going into our rural areas, but we do have underserved parts of the county. And so some areas specifically came up, such as Warsaw Island, Seabrook Stewart Point area. So we want to make sure that we are taking every step necessary in the plan to, provide that service, whether it's for fire protection or for safe drinking water, that we're taking all the necessary steps to address, public water where it's needed in the county. And then finally, equity became it was a very common concern. This is one of the three major pillars of the plan, kind of recognizing that Beaufort County, we're recognized as a great place to live, great quality of life, natural beauty. But if it's not accessible and available to everyone who lives here, then, that's very much a concern of us in this plan, that we're making sure that through our actions, we're promoting equity and promoting the enjoyment of this county, the ability to thrive here, for all residents, and not just for those who can afford, properties in those areas. So that's kind of a lead up to have an overview of what we've been hearing from the public. Obviously, there are a lot of different comments. How we would like to proceed tonight. In the packet, there are, countless pages of comments in the spreadsheet. And I'm hoping that you've all had a chance to look at them. They're available to the public for anyone who links to the agenda for this meeting. We're going to try to, so the comments, as I mentioned earlier, are divided up by comments that lead to new changes to the plan, whether they're new recommendations, new parts of recommendations, minor revisions, general comments, and then corrections, which are sort of the typos and wordsmithing. Our goal is to go through the new comments with the trust that you all have had a chance, if you want to delve into the other ones. Most of them are wordsmithing, they're not substantive changes. And so we were going to go through those tonight, and our goal is to get some direction from the Planning Commission as to what we're recommending as staff as ways to address these comments. Is that what you want us to then present to our consultants so they can make the revisions to the plan, and then the plan would then come back to the Planning Commission to take action at the September meeting? So that's kind of what we're hoping to accomplish tonight, and we're...
So tonight, we're not taking a final vote, we're just we're making a recommendation to forward these on to the consultant
Yeah,
to include the comments that have been provided and the comments and the suggestions.
yes,
And then in September, we will see this again for a final vote. It'll be a public meeting. And then it goes through the review process, ultimately to Natural Resources.
yeah, so I mean, and
And then,
it would go from Planning Commission, and I believe that it is September 9th. It's the Thursday after Labor Day,
okay,
which, because we have a holiday on Monday. Then it would go to the October Natural Resources Committee, and then 3 readings of council. So each one of those is a public meeting.
I wanted this documented and understood so the public knows where the access points are, because this doesn't close off public comments. What it does is forward the process ultimately to a vote by county council as is mandated by the state of South Carolina. There is always an opportunity, even beyond that closure, to amend the comprehensive plan. It needs to be brought before the commission and the staff, and recommendations and comments, and we go through a process much like we're going to tonight. So it doesn't close off the discussion. It allows the discussion to take on more grain detail as it goes forward, recognizing that the comprehensive plan is a high-level strategic document that has critical parts. Beyond, there's an expectation for an action plan that identifies the who, what, when, how we're going to do these things, and sets a priority and responsibility to ensure that that happens. And I think that's an important message that I wanted to make sure the public understands, because that's the process that we go through here. With that said, did you want to go through more at this point on your comments, or would you like the commission members to comment?
I guess that's up, I mean, I guess if there's any questions from the commission up to this point.
Okay, commissioners, questions?
I'm just going to make a general comment on affordable housing. And I don't know if this is in priority order or, based on the number of comments. I don't know how this list was compiled. But, my only suggestion is I think the county's got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what it wants. Because obviously, whatever it wants, it hasn't been in any way successful in getting anywhere with affordable housing, and an awful lot of work and effort has gone into it. So I really think, you're at a crossroads now with the comprehensive plan. I think you have to really stop and go back and relook at it, and, define it, and what are the components of it? Is it affordable housing or is it workforce housing? We hear different terms. Either way, it doesn't matter. We're 20 years or more into this thing. God knows how much money's been spent. And can we point to a unit of housing that somebody would define as affordable? I think, and there's not a criticism at all. I just, a lot of effort, a lot of time went into this, and all. I think you got to rethink the whole approach. There's a lot of grant money out there and all, and I think you got to engage the private sector. I am a member of Marriott, and I was at a Marriott meeting for owners, and the guy was complaining that he couldn't hire people because there's no housing. I said to the guy, I said, really? I said, you got 9 Marriotts on Hilton Head here. Did you ever think of opening up a dormitory-style housing or doing something on your own? You got hotels built all over the country. And you're standing here blaming the county because you don't have a place. You can't hire workers because there's no place for them to live. But it's not their fault, it's your fault. You keep building hotels here, you keep expanding your services and everything, and you think that it's the government's job to come in and solve a problem that you have? I said, I disagree with you. And that's just one aspect of it. So I think, I know a lot of work's gone into it and all, and I know a lot of people are really serious about it, but I think you gotta rethink the whole thing.
How would you advise us to do that? if
I
you
don't
want us
know,
to
I'm not an
rethink?
expert at it.
So you're just
Eric.
making a comment, you don't have
I
any
said that.
solution?
That's
Right, okay.
No, I don't have a solution. And I don't think there is one right now.
I
you
think the
gotta find it.
solution would be, if I might tell you, and I don't know if the comp plan speaks to this or not, because I'm looking at a very small excerpt there. But you all know that many months ago, we hired a consultant to set up a regional housing trust fund. And they have completed their work, and we are getting ready to undertake presenting that work to the Southern Low Country Regional Board that is going to offer several comprehensive options for dealing with affordable housing. I hope the comp plan talks about the Regional Housing Trust Fund. Again, I'm not sure what these
It
bullet
does.
points are.
It
Okay,
does.
that's good. And that work is nearing completion right now. And that is going to be the process that takes us from doing dozens of affordable housing units per year across the county to doing hundreds of affordable housing units per year. It's been very successful in other jurisdictions, and it will be successful in Beaufort County as well. So I don't know what else we can do to go back to the drawing board on that. That is going to be the solution for our region. So
I think the document does go into quite a few factors to propose strengthening and moving forward on affordable housing, including reestablishing the Affordable Task Force, which was multi-departmental, met with affordable housing and community, and came up with ways, incentives that were passed last year on, I think, Zone C5. And hopefully those incentives will be expanded to more zones. I think the situation has become overly critical,
It is, yeah. I
where
agree.
it's been exacerbated by the pandemic, where prices have skyrocketed in homes, and that's pushed rents up, and it's pushed people away from an affordable.
I was down on Hilton Head Island all weekend with the Association County Conference, and there was "we're hiring" signs everywhere whenever you went out to eat and all over the island. And there's a struggle, but there's a plan for dealing with that. We're going to address that, and there will not be necessarily an affordable housing task force. There will be a board that will be appointed from the various jurisdictions as a part of the Regional Housing Trust Fund that will convene on a regular basis and hear the needs and review projects and make recommendations as to which projects get funded, how they get funded, and what things will be eligible for the funding. So
And this program has been very successful in other cities.
oh yeah, very, very much so. Greenville did one, and they took about $3 million investment in the first year or two and turned it into a $43 million funding opportunity for them. So I'm real excited about that. I spend a lot of my time working on that. Even as county administrator, I'm still the one that's leading that charge because it is very important to me, something I'm passionate about, and it's something that I think needs to be solved for the future balance of growth and opportunities in our county for everyone. So I think we're headed in the right direction there. So anyway, so stay tuned.
Thank you, Mr. Greenway. Other questions from commissioners?
Just comments. Rob, on the same subject, the affordable housing, there are other municipalities that rely on density bonuses. And there was a time here when we had something similar to that, and then it was taken away. What is the new comp plan's stand on density bonuses?
Well, the comp plan recommends readdressing density bonuses. We currently, as Eric said, we have one that only applies to C5. And so the idea is to look at the other districts and look at what is appropriate for different parts of the county.
Good.
Yeah.
It works. And it doesn't take government money. It's a public-private partnership, which is the best kind, in my opinion.
That's correct. More questions? Comments, commissioners?
In just affordable housing, Ed, or can I go into another topic?
Any question you might have of Mr.
Oh, okay.
Merchant here?
All right, so I'm reading off of this, this document now, not the stuff I read before. I was at a meeting at Penn in which the Center for Heirs Property Preservation presented about their project with the Open Land Trust on Tom Fripp, I guess it's a Tom Fripp Road in that area. And I just think that on the page 1 of our handout, the item, support the creation of a local office for the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. I think that's a little too prescriptive. I mean, the meeting ended poorly, to be perfectly honest, and I think that there was a lack of trust in that group by some people in the room. It was a little unclear. I mean, I just think it's too prescriptive to say this is the organization that we should rely on to help us solve this problem. I think an organization is good, but I'm a little, I don't know why we're in the business of choosing winners and losers for that job. Like in other areas, you said, get grants. Here's some places where you can get the grants, which I think is completely appropriate. But I just think it's too directed. On the same topic, I think it should be made more clear as a matter of policy that there is maybe a dedicated public meeting once a year, and it's the top of the back of page 1 on our material, more, and I've said this all along, more than developing a brochure, like have about heirs property and how to subdivide property, and that would go into cottage industry too. I mean, literally have, like, make sure that there's like a dedicated person on the planning staff or in community development whose half-time job it is to do X, or have a consultant, where people who have that specific query can come ask. I think my experience has been that sometimes when people who have had challenges about figuring out heirs property, of course in their own family, but getting advice from the county. I mean, you guys would know it better than I do, and I'm sure it's come to Hillary too. Just to make the process clear, what resources are available at the county level. So that's just something I think could be made more clear.
There are resources at the county level.
Yeah.
A lot of issues surrounding heirs property are not county
County,
issues.
absolutely,
They are title
yep.
issues
Yep,
or family
sure.
issues.
Yep.
And, so I think it's something that requires a multifaceted approach. Our goal is to make sure that our rural land use policies, that people understand them and that there's enough opportunity, for people in rural areas. But that's just one part of the equation with heirs property.
Right. I mean, I guess in this, and our role is to say, to lay out, here are the options for, developing heirs property or expanding cottage industry, or, Center for Heirs Preservation, the Charleston outfit, one of their options was to have a model farm and tree farming. That was something they put out. And many in the audience said, I'm not sure our young people want to farm in that manner. Like if there was organic station or a farmer's market associated with it, or why aren't there tennis courts on that land? It gets so, the issues all get conflated and sort of related to one another. So I would love it to be just clear for people who have issues. Here's what the county can offer you. Here's advice.
But I would just say that what we could give advice on is only one part of the equation.
Absolutely, very small part, I get it.
That's why we recommend an organization that specializes in.
Then I guess my recommendation for change would be, we recommend an organization /experts, consultants to be hired by the county or on an as-needed basis, whatever, that the county make that a priority. I mean, others may disagree. I don't have any particular beef against the Center for Heirs Property. I'm just telling you about a meeting that ended very poorly
Yes,
when they were running it. So.
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And in my district, I see a lot of gentrification with the heirs property. And a lot of the people don't understand what's going on. They're following the dollar. And like you say, some of the family of the heirs property are getting left out of the dollar. And developers are coming in and through attorneys and heirs property experts are gradually taking over a good many of the heirs property for the highest bidder. And who protects that or who looks at that? And I don't know if this organization would even concern themselves with that, but I would hope that someone has an ear and eye out for that type of gentrification in heirs property.
Additional comments?
Just one other thing, Rob, on the general mobility, and I think it's great to have more interest in and access points for everything from kayaks to passenger ferries and stuff. But remember years ago when we worked, and there's an idea with the St. Helena Planning Committee, and there's an idea to float a ferry at the, in the Land's End area, at the way end of Land's End, and sort of Riverside on the way down there. I'd be careful about floating that idea just in general, because I think that did not get a lot of buy-in by Native Islanders.
Yes, we were asked to take on, actually by the Planning Commission, to address the issue of water transportation.
Right.
And I agree, is attractive as it is to use our waterways to get people around, there are a lot of concerns about a ferry system because, especially with the docks. And so that's why the comment is as general as possible.
Okay.
That this is something that we support, but we're not in this plan prescribing, we need a dock over in Land's End, which I don't think is.
Right, I just want to make sure that the
Doing much
planning
dredging,
commission.
I don't think it's going to be
Yeah,
feasible.
knew the background. I mean, you and I know because we worked on it for a long time, but thanks. That's really, I was just asking you to clarify that.
These, to me, would be the kinds of things that would be ironed out in an action plan when you look at water usage or water access, because there's many ways to do that. And the fact that, nearly 45% of our county is either water or marsh lowlands, cries out for what are we doing to ease water access, to provide water access, for whatever reason, fishing piers, kayak launches, dockage, boat ramps, etc. And so that's an area that we need to carefully look at and evaluate, see what's best for the greatest number of people.
Yes, and that's been a theme in our past comp plan, and it's carried forward in this one, is increasing public access to the water. So I agree that that is a big concern for the county. The county is currently undergoing a study of our boat ramps, so we're looking at, different parts of our, water infrastructure and, how to improve them and provide access in underserved creeks, where we don't have access currently. So that is in the plan, as it is now. I think what we do not do is try to say, with ferry service, get any further than saying, this is something that needs to be looked at. But when you start looking at the mechanics of providing water transportation, there are a lot of logistical issues about where the docks are. How do you get people from the docks
Parking.
to where they work or where they live?
Yeah.
And so all of those things, it's a very complex study, and I'll just be editorialized. I think the reason it hasn't been successful is because the idea moved so far, and then people realize, wait a second, this is expensive, and I don't know how we're going to. It's something that eventually we may reach a critical mass where water transportation works for the county, but on a larger scale than individual boats.
Okay.
So, yeah, the intention was to go through this, but
I think a lot of the comments on there are ones we've seen before or ones we've commented on
Or
before.
agree with, yeah.
Since this is about the third or fourth time we've seen this.
okay.
But there's a lot of new stuff in here that I think is really good. I was very pleased to see that some new audiences came to the forefront. Yemassee came very strongly with inputs, and I applaud that. I think we can do a lot with the Yemassee area. There were comments from the Port Royal Sound Foundation regarding water quality and the importance of our waterways and safe waterways and how they protect and nurture our environment, whether historic, cultural, and environmental and economic significance. It's our waterways that attract a lot of people to this area. And so there was a lot of newness here that I thought was very useful, and I was pleased to see that it was a positive response from the staff regarding that input. Any other commissioner inputs before I open up to public? Okay, public comments. Please identify yourself, Dawn.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Dawn Page with Low Country Equitable Land and Resource Trust. And I just wanted to go on record and formally thank Chairman Pappas and the rest of the board for your response, for the authentic response to the concerns of the community and the fact that you came back after our first introduction and looking at the comprehensive plan, and that the county and that the planning commission and the staff went back. And I want to thank Rob Merchant and his team for going back and really putting together a robust response and coming back with 3 additional public meetings. And I just want to acknowledge that you listened to your constituents, and I'm very optimistic that we are going to be able to really make the beloved community a reality. And I'm optimistic about the work that we're going to be able to do together. But I do want to thank you on record to say that we appreciate the fact that you have listened and responded. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Yes. Please identify yourself.
Good evening, Jessie White with the Coastal Conservation League. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. As indicated through the documents you all have received and reviewed, we too have extensively reviewed and commented on all four documents associated with the comprehensive plan update, and two are pleased with the robust product that the planning staff and consultants design workshop have produced. In particular, we're pleased to see that many of our concerns and recommendations were taken seriously and incorporated into the revisions. Protections against sand mining and explicit protections for Gullah Geechee burial sites among them, as well as a commitment to infill and redevelopment over permitting new development. We are also pleased to see the incorporation of Yemassee into the regional growth management planning efforts and encourage the county to continue to work closely with the town as it proceeds with updating its plans and policies and moves forward with potentially adopting an urban growth boundary. As the name implies, an urban growth boundary helps communities define where to guide and facilitate growth, while allowing far-reaching areas to remain rural. So extensions of those urban services like water and sewer make sense within the growth boundaries. Extensions beyond the boundaries, however, can be costly on the county and have the potential to induce sprawl. So while there may be instances where extensions beyond growth boundaries are appropriate, we would just advise that anytime those are outside the growth boundaries, that additional precautions and considerations are put in place, including allowances for public notice and extra review perhaps by county council and the utilities regarding those extensions. In addition, just commenting on land conservation and its importance throughout Beaufort County and how successful this initiative has been, we continue to advocate for support of the land protection through rural and critical lands and other initiatives. The public benefits to the community are both to the large and small scale. Large protected landscapes provide public benefit by helping stabilize water quality and keeping our larger farms in operation, while smaller scale protection can help families protect their family-owned lands, important creeks, and access to cultural places. We do, as a community, need to do more to be more proactive and coordinated and collaborative in providing information and resources about the importance of land conservation, and especially for those who are interested in learning more about land conservation and welcoming dialogue for future opportunities. The last thing I just wanted to mention in particular is the county's efforts to work with the Corners Community Preservation District in St. Helena, which has served as a successful model of the county working with a community-driven plan and coming up with changes that benefit both the residents and the county alike. And we would encourage that model to be used throughout the county and throughout communities that have a particular interest in developing a small commercial node or investing specifically in their community while retaining their existing character. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. I have a request here by Mr. Joe Mack.
Yes, good evening. I got called away and I thank y'all for letting me speak. I forgot you can speak on a non-agenda.
You have a non-agenda item?
No, I'm sorry, long day. I forgot you could speak on an agenda item. So
Okay.
government does work, don't listen to what they say, right? Yeah, my name is Joe Mack. I'm a member of, as a member of the Beaufort Trailblazers. We're a group trying to get some traction with some mountain biking trails being built. And almost everyone is multi-use trail. You can walk on it, run on it, and ride your mountain bike. it's a huge, huge idea elsewhere. Hasn't really been done in Beaufort. Trying to do it as close to right where you're sitting right now, within 5-7 miles of here. It's quite a lot of land out there. We gave the proposal, 10 pages. Any assistance y'all can provide, we're not asking for assistance, but we would most appreciate it. Don't have a pot of money to give you, but we have monies and we have the volunteers to help maintain the trails, even build them. Mountain bike trails are quite narrow. They're inward under the phrase conservance of the land. It's scenic. It keeps within. It's not a big soccer field. It's a skinny trail. The sport is huge. It's the fastest growing sport in a few recent years. What those years are, I can't think at the moment because it was a few months ago that I looked it up. And some of the years that it wasn't the fastest growing sport, it most likely was number 2. We call it comprehensive plan. It's next to nothing about Parks and Rec. I didn't see much in there about active. It might have touched on the passive a little bit. I sure don't think it mentioned the Green Street Gym, but the county owns it since 1995, I believe, for $10 from the city. So it would really be nice if we could get the hours on the front door of that building and make it welcoming. I kind of switched topics, but the mountain biking, we have 100 signatures that want mountain biking trails in Beaufort. And most of those people that signed it, I don't have it with me, but I have it. Most of the people that signed it, they put Beaufort as their town.
Okay. Can you summarize your further comments? Your time is about up.
Okay, yeah, I'll just wrap it up. I thank you, sir. They can clear cut land. They've done it on Ladies Island. Excuse me. They can clear cut trees for houses like that on Ladies Island down to Okeechobee. So, I just hope that this will work itself out. Let's keep it simple. I've been in talks with Mr. Greenway, fine man. Last point, I'm so sorry, I had a long day. A person should not have to drive to Charleston to mountain bike. So it's a 21st century version of the softball field. No one should have to drive to Charleston to find a softball field. And even further, Charleston has one in Goose Creek. It's quite incredible. I've done a lot of biking as a kid.
Okay, Mr. Mack, we appreciate
Thanks
your
a lot.
comments.
You have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, do you want to say anything about the Pathways Initiative? And I know there's extensive.
The lady had her hand up.
Yeah. Well, and actually, this may be coming to the September Planning Commission meeting, so it's probably good to give you a heads up. But we are working on a countywide, actually multi-jurisdiction, all the municipalities in the county, on a bicycle and pedestrian plan, primarily looking at biking as a means of transportation, but also its recreation benefits as well. And that's a plan that we want to bring forward as an appendix of the comprehensive plan that we're hoping to present at the September Planning Commission meeting when you consider a revised plan. The other thing to mention is that the county is currently in the beginning stages of a recreation study, looking at all our active recreation needs. So the mountain biking trails is maybe something that could be considered in that plan, but it's not the type of biking that we're looking at in our bicycle and pedestrian plan. That's more of a multi-use pathways getting you from point A to point B.
All right, thank you. We look forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Were there any other public comments regarding the comprehensive plan presentation?
Is it okay for me to speak?
Sure, come on up. If you have 3 minutes, just identify yourself, if you would, please.
My name is Sally Lombard, and I'm from St. Helena Island. I grew up there and have retired there. I enjoyed going through all the notes, and I applaud you for really extending beyond, what was the normal timeframe.
Can you hold on just a second? I'm hearing some background noise. Is that somebody's microphone on the online?
People in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So one of the things I'm concerned about, I've learned and looking into the comprehensive plan, that it is indeed this document that allows us to, put some things in that are measurable. I see the words used, to ensure or to assess, and there's not really timeframes on some of those things, and I'm concerned that the measurability isn't there. And that it's really not an accountable document as the state has really intended for the comprehensive plan to be. And so I'm very concerned about that the words are a little soft. And so when we're looking at what is actually written, I hope that it's going to become a little bit more measurable, so that we can see like what, even if it's phases. So I looked at so I live on St. Helena Island, and I know that a lot of things, we have septic tanks. So when you're looking at even developing something on our own land, it might not just be the preferred, so why isn't there maybe a 25-year phased-in plan for the infrastructure to go in place? Maybe it does have to be very long-term for these phases to happen, where maybe it's not economical for us to do it all fell swoop and for these things to happen, but how else is it gonna happen other than maybe having these things happen in phases? So I think that's applicable to the affordable housing. I think it's applicable to almost everything that we're talking about. And so I would like to see some more harder, measurable language in the comprehensive plan that as we're growing it, we can see, check, we've made the first step, we've made the third step at wherever we're at. And so that's what I'm requesting. That is something that we can see and congratulate each other on these steps accomplished. So thank you.
Thank you. Rob, did you want to say something? We've talked about this, I know.
Thank you. One of the things in this plan, which is a little different than our previous plan, and I think one of the criticisms made about our 2010 plan is that there's all of these action items and very difficult to track because there's just so many and there's no way we can accomplish them. One of the things that this plan has done is we have strategies, and those are meant to be more policy statements, kind of saying the things we value, and that those types of statements guide how we make decisions. And then there are action items, and those are things that could actually be, they're actionable. You can check a box and say that you did it. Some of them are maybe a little bit more ongoing, saying that we're going to continually monitor our natural resource protection standards, But that's one of the things that this plan is trying to focus more on. What are the actionable items that we could do in the next 10 years? Accompanying this will be taking all those action items and arranging them by the difficulty to achieve, when it falls in the time frame over the next 10 years, the cost. So, through that, we'll have a much clearer path forward in direction for staff or other departments or agencies on how to implement the plan. That's something that we really want to focus on this time. The other thing is that our engineering department is developing a 10-year CIP, which is required to accompany the comprehensive plan as part of the Priority Investment Act. So, the idea is that we have action items, but we also have a financial plan forward, how we're going to pay for it. So I agree that there's always, there's that balancing act between overpromising, and trying to look at what is reasonable to do over the next 10 years. And that's something that this plan is aiming to do. So.
Thank you, Rob. And I commend the county for that. As I said at the beginning, for me, an action plan is an essential, critical ingredient to any strategic plan that sets a set of policies and directions. The who, what, when, and having a measurable outcome. I would go a step further and ask very strongly that those outcomes be shared in some sort of report to county council on an annual basis for purposes of tracking how we've done and the status of where we're going. And that we stay on track. And that probably means that somebody on the county staff will have to be the coordinator of this entire action plan. There's going to have to be a coordination effort because there's going to be, I would imagine, multiple department inputs, different people assigned, etc. Somebody has to coordinate that to ensure that it stays on track with the intended action plan that was developed. And I would ask that if we do that, then we will truly have a successful set of outcomes. If we do not, this will sit on the shelf until we get around to modifying it one more time. And I know you're very cognizant of that because of the approach that you took in this particular document. So I thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, I think that concludes the public comments on this issue. What left here is chairman's comments. My only comment is that I really truly thank the county staff, planning department, the folks who've been working on this issue so long. I know it's been tedious at times, frustrating at times, but hopefully personally very rewarding because we've created a product that we can be proud of at this point. And I think the next steps that we're going to see are the crucial ones to take it from a policy planning document to one of an implementation plan that we can have measurable outcomes and success on behalf of the community and all that we stand for in our values. So I thank you for all of that, and I know all of my commissioners feel the same way. Are there any other comments anyone would like to make at this point? Is there any other business that they would like to discuss briefly? If not, hearing none, I will call this meeting adjourned.